Reasons for low voter turnout in the United States and whether these should be minimized. The United States is often heralded as model democracy, but it consistently struggles with low voter turnout, and compared to other developed nations, we just don't have the same. Voter participation is a fundamental pillar of any representative democracy, yet millions of eligible Americans abstain from voting in both the federal and local elections. In recent presidential elections, voter turnout has hovered between 50 and 65%, while midterm and local elections often less than 40. This speech will explore the key reasons for low voter turnout in the United States, examine whether these causes should be addressed, and suggest possible reforms to minimize their efforts. One of the most cited reasons for low voter turnout is voter apathy, a general lack of interest or belief in the electoral process. It happens because many Americans feel their voices don't matter, or that the system is rigged in favor of elites or special interest groups. Negative campaigning and increasing political polarization can make voters cynical or discouraged. Some voters believe that both major political parties are too similarly or equally corrupt, leaving them to abstain from participation. This should be minimized. Democracy thrives when people believe in the power of the vote. Efforts to educate voters about how elections affect their daily lives, from healthcare to taxes and education, can help reduce this apathy. In contrast to many countries who are automatically registered, the U.S. often requires individuals to take initiative to register, sometimes weeks before an election. This happens because each state has its own registration rules and deadlines, which can be very confusing. Voters who move frequently, especially young people and low-income Americans, may find it difficult to keep their registration up to date. Voter ID laws in some states create additional barriers, particularly for marginalized voter groups. This should be minimized. Simplifying the registration process, offering automatic registration, and reducing bureaucratic obstacles would encourage greater participation. U.S. elections are typically held on Tuesday, a workday for most people, which can discourage those with rigid schedules or multiple jobs. This happens because Federal Election Day is not a public holiday. Some voters face long lines at polling stations or lack of transportation to reach voting sites. Mail-in and early voting options are not equally accessible across states. This should be minimized. Making Election Day a national holiday and expanding early voting, along with improving mail-in ballot system, would increase access and convenience, especially to working-class Americans. Not to mention, we have a weak civic education. Civic education in the United States is underfunded and treated as secondary in schools. As a result, many citizens lack the basic understanding of how government functions or how policies affect them. This happens because of inconsistent educational standards across all the states. A curriculum that focuses more on memorization of facts than engagement with current events or democratic responsibility. This should be minimized because stronger civic education at an early age would foster a culture of political engagement and long-term participation. Millions of U.S. residents are legally disenfranchised, including felons in many states, non-citizens in some cases, and people with disabilities. This happens because felony disenfranchisement laws vary widely across states. Legal permanent residents or green card holders pay taxes but cannot vote. Some polling places are inaccessible to people with physical disabilities. This can be minimized by restoring voting rights to former felons and ensuring polling place accessibility, who are essential steps toward more inclusive democracy. The structure of the Electoral College can make voters in non-swing states feel as though their vote carries little weight. It happens because presidential elections are decided by the majority of electoral votes, not by a popular vote. Most states allocate all electoral votes to a candidate with a simple majority, making safe states less competitive. This should be minimized debatably. While abolishing reforming electoral college is controversial, moving towards a national popular vote could increase participation by making everyone equally have a vote. Another issue is gerrymandering. Gerrymandering occurs when political parties manipulate districts' boundaries to favor themselves, often resulting in safe seats that discourage competition. It happens because legislators in many states draw their own district lines. Advanced data and analytics would make it easier to manipulate voter demographics. This definitely should be minimized. Fair redistricting through independent commissions would create a more competitive race and incentivize voter participation. Another issue with the with voting is media coverage. Media coverage often focuses on scandals and horse race polling with substantive policy discussions, which can alienate voters. This sensationalism drives rating and ad revenue, and the rise of social media has increased exposure to misinformation, conspiracy theories, and fake news. This can be minimized through efforts to improve media literacy and fact-checking of misinformation, conspiracy theories, and reduce confusion about the voting process. The youth voter turnout is another issue among voting. Young people, especially those aged 18 to 29, consistently vote at lower rates than older Americans. Young voters are likely to have more frequently or missed registration deadlines. They may feel disconnected from the political process and believe that politicians do not address their own concerns. Outreach campaigns tailored to young people or digital voter registration along with issue-based advocacy can help engage this demographic. It just feels like we're not doing it now. Non-compulsory voting system, unlike countries such as Australia, where voting is mandatory, the U.S. allows citizens to choose whether or not to vote, which inevitably leads to a lower voter turnout. It happens because voluntary voting is seen as a right, not an obligation. There is no legal or financial consequence for abstaining. This is controversial that it can be minimized. Mandatory voting may increase turnout but raises ethical concerns about freedom of choice. However, incentivizing voting through tax credits or lottery entries could be a middle ground. I don't personally agree with that, but I feel like we should protect those freedoms. Distrust in American government and institutions is another deep-rooted issue among Americans because the government, they don't feel like the government has competence or integrity. This happens because of high-profile scandals and gridlock, and it's just eroding the public confidence. Perceptions that elected officials are out of touch with ordinary citizens. This should be minimized, yes, but transparency, accountability, and responsiveness from public officials are key to restoring the trust and encouraging civic engagement. Some potential solutions to all of the low voter turnout in the United States are automatic voter registration, enrolling eligible citizens when they interact with the government agencies. Make Election Day a holiday by increasing the access to working people, expanding early in or mail voting. This offers more flexible options to vote, improving civic education by building lifelong habits of engagement, ending gerrymandering, and using independent commissions to draw fair district lines. Combat disinformation and encourage responsible journalism and media literacy, and restoring voting rights, possibly to ex-felons or the disabled. In conclusion, low voter turnout in the United States is the result of many interlocking social, political, and structural factors. While some citizens may choose not to vote out of disinterest or principle, a large portion is deterred from systematic barriers. This complicated registration process to restrictive voting laws and disenfranchisement. You know what I'm saying. These issues are not only limit representation, but also weaken the legitimacy of democratic governance, addressing them both possible and necessary. A healthy democracy depends on participation of citizens and reforms that make voting easier, more accessible, and more meaningful will go a long way towards voting turnout and strengthening the civic trust.